Okay, so I hope I can just get this done and out there. Man, I made so many attempts at recording a video, but I uh, I kind of started rambling off, and my camcorder ran out of power, or I got called in the middle of recording, and I basically got cut off. I was originally going to record something about stoicism and mental fortitude. I think I've already talked about that kind of ad nauseum in previous, vlogs. And while I feel it's all really important and useful, a lot of other folks have, covered that either in passing or in, greater depth. And, I kind of feel like, going beyond just sort of how you perceive the world, like, hey, this is stuff I can do something about, or it's stuff I can't do anything about, sort of dividing the world up into those sorts of, or issues up into those sorts of categories. I think understanding how to deal with the world or how to deal with conflict, or this whole division between reacting versus responding, that's just as is not more important. um, Especially like observing recent events. Like, I feel with a lot of folks who you know are sort of dealing with or facing how the world is not is the recent events, like I think over the last year or two, maybe even further back. um I feel like a lot of folks they've sort of been maybe asleep at the wheel, and I definitely was for quite a while, if you will, in life, kind of sleepwalking through life. Um, and recent events have sort of forced them to wake up, and sort of like a rude awakening, as the expression goes. And so you're seeing more of a sort of an emotional reaction as opposed to actual like a rational response. Um, and this reminds me of back in the fall 2017 when I was dealing with a lot of garbage from a certain group of people, in particular one girl. And I, ironically enough, interestingly enough, was reading the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene, who's also written the 48 Laws of Power. And at the time this was going on, I was actually at the point where he was talking about Napoleon and his invasion of Russia, and how the Russians responded. Where they, under the leadership of the Tsar at the time, Alexander the First, they decided, instead of facing off in some sort of set piece battle, to essentially engage in sort of what do you call it, like a strategy of I guess asymmetric warfare, guerrilla raids, but mostly like just drawing him in, sort of giving sort of almost like dangling the carrot in front of him and then pulling it away at the last moment, and kind of leading him further and further. And whether it was putting up a few sort of half-hearted battles in some sense, not that they weren't fighting hard, but it was more of like a show to sort of kind of whet his bloodlust, to lead him to committing his forces further and further into Russia, overextending his supply lines, staying too long, aka into the harsh Russian winter, during which the elements, disease, um, the raids of the Cossacks, all this sort of stuff, wore down on his army, and eventually he lost the majority of his soldiers. Not the Tsar, but Napoleon. And then essentially, because lost all the soldiers, that was sort of the breaking point of his overall military career. And even though he had to sort of come back after, after he was first defeated and sent to Elba, came back, had his 100 days, and then it was sort of like a last little hurrah, if you will. But I was reading that at that point in time, and Robert Greene was talking about using sort of like sort of a strategy of like what do you call it, like withdrawal, if you will. Not always being there in front of whoever you're having conflict with, like making yourself scarce, essentially, and then that lending some sort of if you will, some sort of not just like mystery to you, but essentially making you nebulous, so that whoever you're having conflict with, who's trying to go after you, they may end up in a sense chasing you, running off into that abyss, or that sort of what you call it, that distance between you and them, and perhaps tripping themselves up in the act, and that sort of deal. because they gotta sort of try to send other feelers, figure out who you are, what you're up to, what your strengths and weaknesses are, all that kind of stuff to try to figure out. And when you're making yourself scarce, they don't really have a target, so to speak. And oftentimes it might lead the folks who are against you to sort of turning on themselves, and that's their deal. And if you read that section, you can kind of see some of that in there. But I applied that during that time, and that's so much of why I was able to, because so much of why I was able to pass my classes, stay in the program, not wash up, because I didn't go get focused in on fighting them essentially on their own turf, going and being where they were at and getting into arguments and throwing angry looks or getting ticked off or listening in on their conversation. I just was like, I'm putting that someplace else. I'm not going to care about that right now. I'm going to make myself scarce. I'm going to study in my room, stay home essentially when I don't have to be there on campus. Be scarce, and as a result, like I said, I was able to pass those classes, stay in the program, get through that hurdle, and then it's kind of like everything after that was sort of like, a reversal in my favor. And in a sort of similar way, whether it's interpersonally or on some larger scale, this whole idea of just don't give that whoever that you're having issues with or whatever you're having issues with or whatever, you don't give them what they want. If you're fighting Napoleon, you don't go and face him in set piece battles, because he's a master at that. He was a master at that, and he can manipulate his opponent, get them to do what he wanted them to do, and then defeat them in detail. And Alexander the First, the Tsar of Russia, figured that out and was like, okay, I'm not going to give Napoleon what he wants. I'm going to lead him on and bring him in further into Russia, because I know once they get bogged down here with extended supply lines, the Russian winter hits, they don't know how to survive that, and that's what's going to wear down on them. And we'll beat them in terms of morale and attrition, and that's their deal. And as such, if you want to look at sort of broader sense of life, it's sort of like you have to, like I said before, people can do what they want. In my idea, it's better to learn how to respond as opposed to reacting. Being cool and calm under pressure, keeping control of your emotions, because so much of the time in this world, it's not about physical force. It's not about, who can deal out the bigger punch or the kick or whatever. It's about emotional manipulation and control and such. And again, referring tangentially to recent events, so much of what has gone down is that the folks who are really good at manipulation, whether it's emotional or informational, they have essentially taken the high ground, so to speak, because the folks who they were manipulating or trying to trigger or set off, it's almost like they ran right into the trap, so to speak. And you can take this back down to an individual level, where if you're dealing with someone you got conflict with, and they can't literally knock you out, but they gotta do something to make you seem like a crazy person or a threat, which in the environment that you're in, whether it's work or school or whatever. And I dealt with this in college, where people tried to get me to serve do the kind of things that they could then turn around and point at me and go, this guy's a threat, he needs to be removed, get him out of here. And I could have thrown away my entire future, but luckily, whether via this channel, the advice of folks like Dark Magician and Giza and others, or or even Alex Ehlers, and also the books I've been reading, and Off the Train and other folks I was interacting with, and just even applying my sort of rational apparatus, I was able to figure out what was going down. And it was something that obviously I'd never been really prepared for, per se, except for, to a certain extent, maybe my growing up experiences with dealing with certain members of my family, or relatives, or maybe folks in school and middle school, high school, etc., and sort of understanding, okay, this is how folks are going to go about things, because maybe it's the times you live in, maybe it's as you get older, things become more abstract and more in sort of the mental, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, moral realm. But that's kind of where conflict is at. And that's where, success is at, because that's sort of like how things have become. You can't. I mean, you could choose to, but while it might feel great in the moment to get that sort of literal, revenge against someone, or have the upper hand in that sort of sense, like in the grander scheme of things, like it doesn't work like that. And being dumb, falling for tricks like that, and it's not like I haven't myself, but you know, that will do far more damage to you or whatever you're trying to support, whatever you believe in. Because it just makes you look like a crazy, dangerous, threatening person, and maybe you are at that point. Um, and it's definitely not going to sort of help you win out in the long run. It's really, the key thing is to keep cool, calm, and collected, have a larger, broader vision, and be able to present your case as the morally superior, spiritually superior, mental, emotionally more mature, perspective on things. That's one that's like one point I would really want to put out there. Probably the central point here. Other than that, um, you know, I've used the term like recent events, and I think most people probably know what I'm referring to. But I mean, I know in the past I've waffled about talking about politics. I think I'm just kind of tired of the subject. And some of it is just, okay, the time frame that, this is being recorded in. But I sort of, I've had this sort of dealing with folks who think of politics as a joke. Others, lose their mind about it. And maybe it's because I've been following stuff for the last 6 months to a year. Sometimes because of you being in lockdown, you kind of just have a lot of time on your hands. Watching different podcasts and, listening to different sources and so on. And, getting to a point where I feel like I've been significantly informed by stuff. Maybe I'd become desensitized, or maybe I'm sort of seeing stuff playing out in this country and in the world at large is sort of like nothing more than an amplified version of what I've dealt with for the last 3 to 5 years in college. Just the different strategies folks would use, the different, almost like the hierarchy, the pecking order, the dominance hierarchy, whatever you want to call it, relational aggression, spreading lies about people, backstabbing, manipulation, emotional manipulation, all that kind of stuff. And I just kind of see it and go, oh, this is just like in college, but instead of, it being, I don't know, forcing somebody into a situation where they're devoting so much energy towards things that have nothing to do with academics, such that they, get bad grades, wash out of the system, wash out of the program, or get, this guy jealous of the other guy because he's with the girl the first guy likes, or whatever. It's, you take that and you replace that with other goalposts, and it's pretty much the same thing. And maybe because of my experience with them, just kind of looking at it going like, yeah, these are the tactics they use. This is what they're trying to get at. I'm not going to react like that. I'm going to be rational, logical. I'm going to focus on what's important. I'm going to focus on what I can do something about, which is like my finances, my work, my fitness. What else? And it's not saying that I've been 100% on point with all of those. Heck, first time out of college, I had to really pay off a bunch of credit card debt, which I had accrued by buying all sorts of fancy clothes, trying to impress a certain girl. And it's not something I'm proud of, but eventually got my mind straightened out on that. But focusing on those things that I actually have control over, and which are far more likely to actually solve real problems in my life. I'm not expecting some lone ranger to ride over the hills and save me. I'm not looking for a hero to save me, and I gotta be the hero of my own story. And I think that's another point to really kind of consider. You have to be the hero of your own life story. You got to be that, and you can. And I'm not getting into religion either, but it's sort of like you gotta take charge of your own life story, your own life trajectory, and be that hero who saves yourself in a sense from the, be the Saint George the dragon slayer of your own life, going out and fighting the dragons that you're facing in your life, whether, it's money issues, work, education, you know, I mean, barring some catastrophic, terminal disease. I mean, stuff like, okay, your weight or your physique, your strength, how many reps you can do, push-ups, whatever, how many miles you can run, being that, that hero, that becoming that sort of, that warrior, that hero in your own life who, goes and knocks down those obstacles and makes your own life better, And perhaps that's another reason why, there's that sort of dichotomy between folks who think of politics, let's say, or religion, in that matter, as a joke, or as, like all that life is about. Because maybe it's all about like sort of that sort of perspective, folks who think that if the political realm doesn't work out in their favor, then that's it, they're screwed, there's nobody coming to save them, that sort of a deal. And maybe in some cases it really is that bad. I don't know everybody's circumstances, and others who think it's as a joke. Well, maybe it is because they are that well off, or maybe it's because they've developed a certain amount of acceptance of things. Maybe they're laughing because they're really stoics. Can't 100% tell, but that's kind of what I had to say right now. There is a quote of Epictetus's that I remember, something along the lines of, the way to happiness is in the acceptance of those things which are beyond the power of our will. Now, I'm all about it, accepting those things that are beyond the power of my will, but, on the flip side, there also is the, acting upon those things which are within the power of our will. And I think that's the only real way to sort of, strengthen yourself and make the world less chaotic, less scary, less traumatic or traumatizing, less anxiety inducing, because at least if you feel you can do something about some part of the world and you are doing that, you're getting results, you're seeing a return, on your actions. Well, okay, you at least you see something there. Maybe, sort of matter of testing, okay, what are my limits? How much better can I make this life, this world, that sort of thing, and going out there and figuring that out. But yeah, I'm I'm wearing a leather jacket. That's where the sound is coming from. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say right now. I'm just gonna head back in. It's 8:20 p.m. right now, so I'm gonna go take a hot shower and just go to bed because I'm tired. I had to stay an hour extra. We had some like meet and greet event between different teams and trying to socialize and network, because I want to get more towards the engineering side of things. But got home, I'm really, really beat. So yeah, that's all I have to say for now. Hopefully I can actually record or upload this. But excuse me. See you folks around. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the likes, the comments, the subscriptions. I hope anything that I said, I know it's kind of like almost like my shower thoughts while sitting in my car, but I hope it helps somebody out there. And I hope that, I honestly make the most effort to actually follow my own advice, yeah. Anyways, see you folks around. Thanks for watching, and bye.